You are no longer a number. Or are you still thinking like one? The shame of your past is actually strategic leverage for your future, provided you can break the parole mindset that dictates your every move. We're dismantling the lingering self doubt to transform your survivor instincts into elite leadership strategies. Welcome back to the Conviction Fiction Podcast, where we change the narrative of life after incarceration. This is not just a conversation about coming home. This is a conversation about becoming whole. Um, because physical freedom, a lot of times when we think about physical freedom and mental freedom, they're not always granted on the same day. Now, a gate can open, a sentence can end, a parole officer can close your case. Your supervision can be terminated. Your identification can have your real name on it instead of a number. You can have a job, a business, a family, a home, a platform, people who respect you, and still feel like you need permission to exist in the life you built. Now, that is what we are confronting today. The lingering belief that you are being watched, the fear that one mistake will erase every bit of progress you have made, that feeling that you must constantly explain yourself, prove yourself, defend yourself, or minimize yourself so other people will feel comfortable. That's something we do. We'll minimize ourselves so other people will feel comfortable. That's a parole mindset. It is not limited to people who are currently on parole. It's a psychological condition created when survival, compliance, hypervigilance, and external approval become so deeply programmed that they continue controlling your behavior long after the physical restrictions are gone. Long after those restrictions are gone. You may be free in 2026, but part of your mind may still be standing waiting on chow call, waiting on count time. Part of your mind may still be waiting for permission to move. Part of your mind may still believe that authority belongs to everybody, the warden, the sergeant, the corporal, the CO, whoever. That authority belongs to everybody except you. Today, we're going to go beyond that mindset, not by pretending the past didn't happen. We don't do that here, right? We acknowledge that things happen. That's not to minimize hurt, pain, cause of, what we did or what we may have done or what we allegedly done. We don't pretend that. We don't pretend that the past didn't happen. We're not hiding behind the damage. We're not hiding the damage. We're not trying to perform confidence that we have not yet developed. We are going to examine the old survival programming, identify where it still controls us, and strategically rewrite it, because we are in a society now. We need to know how to move, because the same instincts that helped you survive confinement can become some of your greatest leadership tools once you stop allowing those instincts to lead without direction. This is the Conviction Fiction Podcast. Let's go ahead and get into it. There's a ghost in the room that follows many people home from incarceration. Now, it don't have a physical body, it don't wear a uniform, it doesn't carry a clipboard, it doesn't have on like a sheet like what most ghosts have on, like what people try to say. It does not have the authority to like violate you or write you up or place you in SEG or send you back, but it still influences your decisions. Now, what do I mean by that? It still influences your decision because every move that you make out here in society is dictated or predicated on this idea that you're going back. It tells you to be careful. It tells you not to get too comfortable. It tells you not to speak too loudly. It tells you not to draw attention to yourself. Like, certain rooms are not built for people like you. It can make you believe that somebody is eventually going to discover that you do not belong. Now, how do we get that mindset where we do not belong? Right? That ghost. That ghost is the internalized authority of the system. Now you've been like physically released, and but the system still has an office up here inside your head. It approves or denies your ideas. It reviews your decisions. It questions your motives, like why are you doing this? It's going to remind you of your worst moment every time you try to step into something great. And I had to live with that. Some of you living with that now. And one of the first ways this ghost reveals itself is through the invisible reflex of asking for permission. You may not literally ask, can I do this? Instead, it come off like, man, do you think I ought to apply for this job? Or do you think people will accept me? Or do you think I can charge that much for this service that I'm providing or this product that I created legally? A legal service, a legal product. But can I charge this much? Because it's not going to be approved. Like nobody going to pay that to me. Do that. Do you think somebody like me can lead, or would they let me lead? There's nothing wrong with seeking wisdom or asking for advice. I look for advice and wisdom in every person that I know. I don't get advice from people that I don't know that could, potentially, you get that energy. Some people just got that energy where, I don't need to listen to them. I don't need to listen to them at all. But I do believe that you need to seek advice or wisdom. The problem begins when you no longer trust yourself to make any meaningful decision without external approval for your life. Not for nobody else, for your life. That's not humility. That is conditioned hesitation. When you have spent years being told when to wake up, when to eat, when to shower, when to move, where to stand, what to wear, when to speak, personal decision making, like what kind of snacks can you eat, right? Even freedom can feel like a test you're afraid to fail. This is why I define the parole mindset as the lingering survival software. It's just in the background, running on modern hardware. And what do I mean by that, right? You have a modern life. You might have a smartphone, a laptop, a career, a business, a family, and responsibilities, to name a few. You might be managing employees. There are people that get out and manage employees or speak publicly or coach young people, create programs, write books, or, building organizations. They out there doing it. That is the modern hardware. That's what I mean by you got modern hardware. But internally, you got some outdated survival software. That software still may be operating in the background with all this new stuff going on. This old software says, like, keep your head down, don't trust nobody, never show weakness, expect somebody to betray you, and stay ready for conflict, stay on your toes. It's that survival software that prison sometimes conditions people to believe in. I mean, if you've been there, if you know, you can't let nobody get too close to you. You can't never admit that you don't know something, right? You don't want to make mistakes. or get noticed. Those rules may have helped you survive a dangerous environment, but what protects you in one environment can imprison you in another. The problem is not that, you learn survival skills. I mean, those are great skills to have. The problem is that nobody taught you when to turn that shit off, right? That is where the professional impostor syndrome can enter the room, right? You enter a boardroom, you go to a classroom, a training environment, a networking event, a meeting, and suddenly you become extremely aware of who you are. You wonder whether you use the right word or use too much slang or, looking at everybody's facial expressions, like who's bluffing, who about to make a move. You assume a pause, like somebody just thinking, means disapproval. You can't even take a pause around somebody because that means they second guessing. If they take a pause on you, right? You interpret feedback, just somebody saying, hey, look, man, I don't think that's a good idea. You interpret that as rejection, like somebody turned you down, right? Or just like, I think you should do it this way instead of this way that you present it. You feel as though everyone else, bro, received an instruction manual for professional life, that somehow you missed that whole instruction manual. But that feeling did not come from nowhere, man. In many cases, it is connected to the higher stakes hypervigilance required when you're on the yard. Inside, observation is survival. You learn to read posture. You learn to monitor tone. You detect shifts in energy. You know when they get quiet, it's too quiet. Something going on, right? You recognize when a room changes before anyone even say a word. You know who came in, you know who left, who's standing too close, who talking too long together. That level of awareness can save your life in confinement. But when it enters professional environments, we talking about professional environments, modern environments. When you enter those environments without being recalibrated out here, it can cause you to misread neutral situations as threats. For instance, supervisor asked me a question one time. First thing I heard, I thought he was accusing me of something, right? I thought he was accusing me. A colleague, somebody came up to me one time and challenged an idea that I had. And then, immediately I thought they were just straight up disrespectful. The room may be safe, but your body is responding to old danger. That's the ghost in the room that we're talking about today. Now, the first strategic step, right, to get rid of this thinking, right, towards overcoming self-doubt is identifying which part of your response belongs to the present and which part belongs to the past. You need to start asking yourself, right, is this situation, like where I am right now, is this situation actually dangerous? Or does it merely just feel familiar? That one question can interrupt years of automatic programming. Now, you cannot change what you refuse to examine. I say that all the time on the show. Most lingering self-doubt does not announce itself with a loud voice. Most lingering self-doubt does not announce itself with a loud voice. I'm going to say that again. Most lingering self-doubt does not announce itself with a loud voice, right? It appears through like micro behaviors, like little stuff, small actions, automatic responses that seem harmless until you realize they are really shaping your entire life, right? You may completely avoid eye contact when speaking to someone you perceive as, make more money than you, or someone you perceive as powerful. You may avoid complete eye contact with them. And sometimes you may over-explain where you were, what you were doing, or why something happened, even though nobody accused you of nothing, right? You ever find yourself apologizing before even sharing your opinion? You may say, I'm probably wrong, but I need to say this, or decline opportunities because you assume you are underqualified, right? All these things are part of that hypervigilance, right? You say stuff like, "Oh, it was nothing," or if you accomplish something, say you accomplish something, you may immediately start minimizing your own accomplishments. Like, it was nothing. I just got lucky. Anybody could have done it. I'm still trying to figure it out. And this is something I had to like really, really think about for myself, right? I became a workaholic. I'm talking about work 7 days a week, right? I was working excessively because I felt like the past meant that I need to outperform everyone else just to deserve to be at the same table with you folks. You know what I'm saying? I would become defensive when people ask ordinary questions because my nervous system was wired to associate questions with suspicion. Now, these are reflexive hesitations. They happen before conscious thought, right? That's why you need to conduct a personal audit for 1 week. For 1 week, just observe yourself without judgment. You want to pay attention to the moments when you shrink or you try to over-explain or become defensive. Do not immediately try to fix everything. First, you need to collect evidence. Like, what happened? What did I assume? What did I feel in my body? What did I believe was about to happen? How did I respond? What a secure version of me have done differently? If I was more secure in myself, what could have been done differently? Now, that little mindset shift will allow you to move from emotional reaction to strategic observation. It turns confusion into data, basically what I'm saying. One of the most important areas to examine is your defensive posture. In the past, your defensiveness may have protected your dignity and protected your rep. It may have prevented people from mistaking you being kind for weakness. It may have helped you establish boundaries in an environment where vulnerability carry consequences, right? You don't want to be conditioned or known as vulnerable. Not in prison, not on the block. You don't want to be considered vulnerable, but defensive posturing can block collaboration in your current life. You cannot build strong partnerships if every disagreement feels like disrespect, or receive some mentorship from somebody if every time they correct you, it feels like they're trying to control you. All right. No leader can lead effectively if every question feels like a challenge to his or her authority. That posture is communicated, like through confinement, like strength and confinement may communicate insecurity in professional and personal relationships. It's different. That does not mean becoming weak. It means developing enough internal security to choose your response instead of being controlled by it. There's a difference between being alert and being reactive. There's a difference between setting a boundary and building a wall. The goal is to transition from reacting to perceived threats to observing them as outdated software. When you feel your body becoming defensive, just pause for a minute. Do not immediately follow the rule that, say internally, man, right now, man, my nervous system has detected a pattern, not a fact, not a real threat, but a pattern. Then you can start asking yourself different questions like, is this person attacking me, or are they asking for clarification, right? Or what evidence do I have that I'm in danger right now? Because that's what happens. We perceive threats as dangerous situations. Like, am I responding to this person, or am I responding to somebody from my past? Right? That final question is powerful, because sometimes the person standing in front of you is receiving a reaction that probably belongs to someone who harmed you years ago or threatened you years ago. You know, self-doubt often disguises itself as certain. You become certain that people are judging you, certain that you will be rejected, certain that you don't belong, certain that failure is coming, certain that you're just not going to make it. But certainty without evidence is still fear. Your job is to audit that fear, not deny it, not shame it, not act like it didn't happen. Examine it. Your reactions are information. They're not always the instructions. And once you identify that outdated programming, you got to learn how to replace it. You cannot simply remove an old survival response and leave an empty space. The mind does not operate well with a vacuum. You need a new protocol, a new set of rules, a new set of internal instructions. Now, many of those instructions are provided. I got this workshop that I've been working on. You know, I'm a workaholic. I've been trying to get this thing off the ground, learning code and all that stuff. And it go back to what I was just saying a minute ago. I became a workaholic in the sense that I wanted to get this curriculum out because this is the curriculum that I needed when I first got home. Right? So ask your government, ask your official, ask your wardens, ask your reentry houses to get this workshop. Because I think it'll help. Like, because I'm trying to fill that vacuum before something else get in there. Right? Because the first thing I had to rewrite was the instinct to hide my story. I didn't want to tell people I had been in prison. I was robbing folks and shooting. You know what I'm saying? I was selling drugs. And many people believe that their past automatically disqualifies them. They believe that the safest strategy is to hide it, minimize it, or avoid any situation where it might be discovered. There are certainly environments where privacy and strategic disclosure are important. You don't owe everybody your story. You can't just run around like, yeah, man, I've been in prison. I was locked up 15 years. But there's a difference between privacy and shame. Privacy says, I decide who receives access to my story. Shame says that, you know, my story makes me unworthy of being seen. Now, your history can become strategic leverage when you understand its value. You have knowledge of consequences. You understand pressure. You understand what happens when poor decisions compound over time. You understand institutional systems. You understand human behavior under stress. A lot of people don't even know that. You have all of these skills. You understand the difference between freedom as a concept, like, you know, July 4th and all that, and freedom as a responsibility, right? You understand rebuilding without taking any shortcuts. You understand rejection. Know you've been rejected before. You probably had to start over. Some of us, some of y'all had to start over several times, right? You understand what it means to continue when the future is uncertain. Now, these are not just like painful experiences. They are forms of expertise, right? The decision is not to glorify incarceration. The decision is to extract the lessons without continuing to live inside the punishment. You do not have to hide your resilience. You need to learn how to communicate your resilience. Instead of saying, I lost years of my life, you can also say, hey, I developed an uncommon understanding of time, consequences, discipline, and human transformation. You don't got to say you got a record. You can say that, I have firsthand knowledge of how systems affect behavior, families, communities, and opportunity. You can have this mindset that you behind, everybody else because they've been out here. But like I always say, my route was different, but the skills I gained are super relevant. And now this is going to lead to another essential shift for you, moving from scarcity to abundance. This whole parole mindset is naturally focused on avoiding trouble. Do not violate, don't be late, don't be with the wrong people, do not go to the wrong places or make the wrong move. Survival becomes more organized around what you must avoid, not what you're around, but what you don't need to be around. That mindset may keep you out of immediate trouble, but it cannot build an expansive life. It can't give you room to grow, because a meaningful future cannot be based only on what you are trying not to do. A meaningful life can't be based on what you can't do. At some point, you must move from avoiding failure to creating value. Because when you ain't gotten there, you got this scarce mindset. You always thinking like, how do I keep from losing what I have? Right? I got to keep this. I got to hold on to it. Right? So how do I do that? But if you live in abundance, you're thinking like, what can I build with what I already have? Right? And it's just a mindset shift, fam. It's just like, instead of asking, let's do what a scared person say. Do what a scared person say. When I say scarcity, I say scarcity in the sense of you're scared to lose something. You're scared, you're afraid. We talk about fear a lot on here. And scarcity is comes from scared, from being scared. It's the way you frame the questions that you ask yourself. Like, who's gonna give me a chance? Who will give me a chance? Instead, like, if we're living an abundant life where we're not afraid, it's more of, what problem can I solve? Because if I could solve a problem, right, somebody gonna give me a chance because I know how to solve the problem. Does that make sense? Right? When you're scared, you ask yourself, how do I prove I am not who I used to be? Instead of, who am I becoming? And what does that person contribute? Who am I becoming? And what can I contribute? You know what I'm saying? I don't worry about, I hope they accept me anymore. I don't worry about that. I go in there in any place. I'm going to enter this space prepared to serve, learn, and add some value wherever I go. I ain't scared going. I ain't finna say like, man, I hope they don't look at me crazy. Do I look good? I hope I gotta control myself. I gotta put that authority, that ghost. Come on, ghost. I need this ghost to go with me. The ghost of authority. Right? No, I don't need that. I'm going in there to make my mark, to serve, to learn, and add value. That is not motivational fantasy. That is strategic positioning. When you focus on being accepted, other people control your identity. Now, when you focus on creating value, you regain agency. Now, the next step is establishing daily rituals that reinforce personal freedom, right? Personal freedom means you govern yourself, right? You make decisions according to your principles, your mission, your long-term goals, not merely according to, we was talking about scared and pressure and fear, right? There's several things that you can do to help diminish the power of like that prison number. One thing, I'm going to tell you what my routine was. Every morning. I still do some of them to this day. But every morning, say your full name out loud and proud. You know what I'm saying? Like Antoine Rivers. I know nickname, alias, not no number. I'm talking about full government name. Then I would state 3 things attached to my current identity. Like, my name is Antoine Rivers. I'm responsible for leading my family. I'm responsible for developing my gifts. I'm responsible for creating value in my community. Now, the goal is not like empty affirmation. The goal is identity reinforcement. Now, what does that mean? It's being able to reinforce the idea and the productivity that you're creating. You're just affirming that. It's goal reinforcement. Second, I would suggest you make one intentional decision every day without asking for unnecessary permission. It can be small, some like send a proposal or apply for the position. Don't ask yourself, don't ask the ghost authority. Just state your opinion. Schedule an appointment, right? Each autonomous decision becomes evidence that you trust yourself. And third, document one example of value that you created today. Like, you might have helped someone. Right now, I helped this person today. What did you improve on? I improved in this area today. I learned this today. Write it down. Your minds may still be collecting evidence that you are inadequate. You have to intentionally collect evidence that you are quite effective. And then decompression. I had this little thing where I would learn how to decompress because hypervigilance is exhausting. Man, we need to have a signal to tell us that the day is over and that we're safe. I needed that. I needed something to calm me down and say, look, hey, you're safe, right? Everything is good. They mean you start walking or journaling. One of my favorites was meditating or listening to music without no words. I'm talking about music without words, like a jazz or some classical. No words, right? I didn't need the influence. I need more influence. I just needed to be me and myself and my thoughts, right? That way I was teaching my body that rest is not vulnerability, right? Rest is recovery. It's preparation. It's a part of leadership. Now, we are not trying to stop thinking like a person on paper, right? We are trying to build a leadership identity. And to form a leadership identity, that requires more than rejecting who you were. You got to like build a new one. You must architect the new one, right? I had a show about the architect blueprint, right? Because architects have to develop a vision, study the environment, look for pressure, consider structure, then create something capable of lasting. That's what your leadership identity must be built on, with that same intention. You got to start by translating the observation skills you develop inside into modern situational awareness, right? We learn to read environments, that ability that you can, that ability alone being able to read an environment can make you an exceptional leader, right? You can notice when a team is losing morale before, the numbers start going down or they start losing, right? You can identify conflict before it becomes like out there in the open. You know how to recognize when someone feels like they're not a part of something and what that could lead to when they're not feeling like they're a part of something. You can detect inconsistency between what people say and what they do, like lying and, we can do that, right? We can also, and it's crazy that we have these uncanny abilities, right? We can remain aware of multiple dynamics at once. See how all of it play out. And it's like a storyline. And anticipate the consequences. Now, those are high-level leadership skills. Now, the difference is that you must use them to create safety rather than merely detect when something's dangerous, right? Inside, though, listen to me. Inside, situational awareness may have helped you avoid harm, kept you out of trouble, kept your folks, your people, whoever, I don't know, kept them out of trouble. In leadership, situational awareness helps you prevent confusion, resolve conflict, and protect people, all by making informed decisions. The skill itself is not the problem. It's the mission assigned to the skill that must change. You're no longer scanning the room to identify who finna get swung on or who may attack you. You're scanning the room to identify what the team needs, not studying, people to determine who cannot be trusted. What you're studying now is communication to determine where clarity is missing, right? We ain't preparing for confrontation no more, man. We're preparing for responsible intervention. That's the leadership transformation. You got to reframe overcoming the system as a qualification for high pressure decision making. This is not about glorifying incarceration. There's nothing glamorous about losing freedom. I'm gonna say that again because people think that's like what we on here for. There's nothing glamorous about being locked up. There's nothing glamorous about being told what to do or sleeping in a bunk or in a room with another man. Ain't nothing glamorous about that. Being separated from your family. There ain't nothing glamorous about it, right? So what this show is doing is showing people that have been in that situation how to use those situational awareness that we gain, how to transform that into leadership that can actually help people, that can actually motivate people, that can actually improve or add value to the community. That's what we're trying to do, right? Ain't nothing glamorous about living under institutional control. Stop that. Or carrying the consequences of harmful decisions. We just survive that, what many people cannot even imagine or that they dream up or think about, like what's on TV. You learn how to make decisions with limited resources. We learn how to manage emotions when choices were restricted. We learn how to adapt, how to wait, how to observe, how to endure discomfort. The key word I'm saying is like we learn. When developed intentionally, those lessons can make you highly effective under pressure. That will make you a highly effective leader. In business, leadership, parenting, public speaking, community work, coaching, crisis management, you name it. The ability to remain composed is valuable. You know what it means when the stakes are real. Now you must move from being a person who survived the sentence to a leader who manages complex environments. I know a lot of people are like, well, that's just a play on semantics. No, it's not. It's actually real. right? This means you cannot continue using your past as the only evidence that you are powerful. There has to be new evidence, current evidence, evidence that you are disciplined now, dependable, communicate well now, evidence that you manage conflict now, evidence that you can trust your decisions, that you can start now. Whatever you finish, you can start and finish it now. The sentence may explain your training ground, but it cannot remain your entire identity. At some point, you got to stop saying, look what I survived, and start saying, well, take a look at what I'm building. That is the leadership identity. That is changing the narrative, right? Not just what society believes about you, but what you believe about yourself, right? Now, the final stage is agency, man, right? Agency is, the belief and practice that your choices matter. It's like what's valuable, that you have the ability to influence your direction. Now, that future is not completely controlled by your past, what camp you were in or public opinion, or the mistakes that you made. Absolute agency does not mean that you control everything. You do not control every opportunity, every employer, or every law. You do not control every judgment. You do not even control whether people forgive you, understand you, or will give you access to them. You don't control that. What agency means is that within the reality you have been given, you accept that responsibility for your response, your preparation, your character, and your direction. That's the first step. It's like committing to a future self-narrative that is no longer anchored to your release date, right? The date you came home matters, right? It represents transition. It may represent joy, fear, gratitude. I had 3,000 million emotions going on when I came home, but most of it was about being able to have a second chance. But your life cannot remain emotionally frozen in little key moments. You're not the only person who came home on a particular date. You are the person you are becoming 10, 20, 30 years down the line. What does your life look like when formerly incarcerated is context rather than the headline, right? So you have to ask yourself some real hard questions, man. First, you got to learn how to define success. Don't merely say you want to be successful. You got to define success, right? What kind of person are you? How do you make decisions? How do you manage your money or handle conflict, right? That is how you begin designing a long-term roadmap where the past becomes a foundation rather than a ceiling. A foundation, as you know, like that's up underneath the building. That's what holds the building up. It supports the structure, but it's not the entire structure. Your past can support wisdom. It can support compassion, urgency, discipline, credibility, but it cannot be the ceiling that limits how high you are allowed to rise. You can be more than the lesson that you learn. You are permitted. I'm telling you, on this podcast, you are permitted to develop expertise unrelated to incarceration, right? Go code, learn code, right? Build websites, build workshops, write books, right? Be a coach. You are permitted to build wealth. You're permitted to experience peace, right? These are all things that I want to share with you to give you permission, because you may not want to give yourself the permission right now. Maybe you're incapable of giving permission to yourself. Maybe that ghost of authority still following you around, right? Saying that you can't laugh without being guilty, right? You can't lead without disclosing your pain. You can do all that. Your suffering does not have to remain your only source of legitimacy. That final transition requires replacing reactive social compliance with a proactive personal mission statement, right? Reactive people. That just, we're going to get into a show about reactive and proactive because I think that's very important, because people will be reactive just so they don't get out of compliance with society or what socially, how people think about them. They'll be that I will do whatever it takes to keep people from judging me, or I will stay quiet so nobody gonna misunderstand what I'm trying to say. Or, I will avoid taking a risk on starting a company so I cannot be criticized if I fail. Right? Right? Instead of saying like, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, this is what I'm building. These are the people I'm committed to serving. These are the values that govern my decisions. And this is the direction of my life. Right? Direction of my life, not your life, my life. It don't need to be long. It just need to be clear. Right? Just, having a statement can create a filter. So when the opportunity appears, you can ask whether that supports your mission statement. A good one, I found this one earlier today and I wrote it down real quick. And it read, where is it? Saw a mission statement somebody had wrote. It says, my mission is to use the discipline, resilience, and insight developed through adversity to create opportunities, strengthen families, and lead people toward personal accountability and sustainable freedom. And I looked at that, I was like, that need to be my mission statement. It need to be shared across. So I will post this in the socials for this episode, because when self-doubt appears, you need to be able to distinguish if that doubt is going to move you toward or away from what your mission is. When people judge your past, just go back to your mission. When people that you're around, when people judge your past, just go back to the mission. When that old survival software begins running, just go back to your mission, right? Or if you feel like an imposter, right, just go back, because a person controlled by social compliance is going to constantly ask, like, what do they want me to be? And they're going to move in that direction trying to do that. When you need to be a person of agency, where you can critically ask yourself, what does my mission require me to become? That's the shift. It's a narrative shift in your mind. And hopefully, people do it. We'll go out there and be able to, change the narrative across the board. While people deal with incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, right? You got to learn how to pause and audit what's going on and own your authority, right? Now, let me ask you something before I close out today. What part of your behavior is still organized around the expectation of punishment? Where are you still asking for permission? Where are you still over-explaining? Where are you still standing for count mentally, even though nobody has called your number? You are no longer a number, but becoming free from the number requires more than changing clothes, addresses, and identification. It requires reclaiming authority over your internal world. That parole mindset says don't make mistakes. What we're trying to get you to think of is make thoughtful decisions and take responsibility for the outcome, right? You don't have to stay invisible. Become visible through service, preparation, and value, right? Your history is not a liability. Your history contains lessons that can become leverage. Now, you survived the sentence. Now you must stop sentencing yourself. You survived the institution that assigned you a number. Now you must build an identity strong enough to answer to your name. You survive environments that require hypervigilance. Now You must become a creator of value. You must become the architect of your future. The past is real. The harm was real. The losses are real. The barriers are real, but they do not possess unlimited authority over what comes next for you. You are not being asked to forget where you came from. You're being challenged to stop living as though you never left. This is your identity shift. This is your permission to agency. This is from defense to discernment, from survival to strategy, from sentence to mission. This has been the Conviction Fiction Podcast, where we are committed to changing the narrative of life after incarceration. To the Conviction Collective, remember this. You guys know your past may explain some of your instincts, but it don't have to control your identity. Turn that strength into discipline and turn your freedom into something bigger than the absence of confinement. Until next time, guys, keep doing the work within, keep turning forward. And remember, we are changing the narrative. Your past may explain you, but it does not have to define you. Peace.